Welcome to Rican Wrestling Talk. I'm your host, Luis Rodriguez. And this week I figured we'd be delving into a couple different topics. One of which that I wanted to talk about was the MJF and Bryan Danielson feud. In my opinion, this is the best feud in all of professional wrestling. Let me elaborate. A while ago, we had a feud that was very similar to this. It was the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels versus Randy Orton. I'm sure you don't remember the specific feud, but I'll tell you that in one match, the super kick was banned. And that feud was unbelievable. You see, Shawn Michaels did all the work in the ring for the build of that feud. He took all the bumps, he had all the matches, and Randy Orton, well, he sold it on the mic. Now, Shawn Michaels can hold his own on the microphone, but he didn't need to, not for this feud. And this is why I think this feud is very similar to the Bryan MJF feud. You see, right now, Bryan is doing everything. He's doing all of the hard work, and MJF is doing more work on the microphone. Now, let me explain myself. To sell a proper feud between a good guy and a bad guy, you have to have a villain. You have to have a villain. Somebody that has so much heat that no matter what he does, the fans just won't cheer for him. Now, AEW's crowd is a little different because they tend to cheer for guys they're not supposed to cheer for. They're what you call smarks. They're smart marks. And when you watch this happen, you're watching Bryan put a clinic after another clinic after another clinic every single week. Or he's putting on a clinic, I should say. He's wrestling all types of wrestlers. Brian Cage. He's wrestling Bandito. And so on and so forth. But what I can tell you he's doing is he's getting the crowd behind him. Because I can bet you that a lot of fans believe he's going to end MJF's reign. I'm here to tell you that I don't believe that's going to happen. Now, first, I should let everyone know that Bryan Danielson is my favorite wrestler. He has been since the first time I saw him at Charity Hall in Bayonne, New Jersey, back in 2003. I thought the moment I saw this kid wrestle another superstar at the time, an indie darling, Loki, I thought to myself, this guy is the goods. But clearly, it was like rooting for any other indie wrestler. A Reckless Youth, a Mike Quackenbush, a Rick Blade, a Skinhead Ivan, a Dan Moff. Any of those wrestlers from back in the day, they weren't super successful in WWE. Some of them didn't even make it to WWE, but they were huge on the indie scene. But I remember going to my brother's house and sitting down and watching the King of the Indies. See, he got it from a tape trader, another wrestling fan who gave him a VHS tape. And it was two tapes, kind of like the Titanic VHS tapes. And in this, Bryan won this tournament. I believe it was the inaugural tournament for the King of the Independents. So I've been a big fan of his, and I rooted for him hard. I own every t-shirt that he produced in WWE. I am what you would say a mark. I mark out for this man. But what I'm watching now is more impressive than his WWE WrestleMania 30 run. And the reason I say that is because back then, he organically got over. The fans were just behind him. He was an everyday man, kind of like what Sami Zayn has become in WWE today. Well, when he went to AEW, they kind of fumbled the bag, just like Eric Bischoff did with Bret Hart. He came in off a WrestleMania main event with two of the biggest superstars in WWE history. And then he culminated that with a one-on-one feud with Roman Reigns, only to have a match, which is essentially loser leaves town. So he came in hot. I mean, he ruined, well, I shouldn't say he ruined, but Tony Khan and the AEW brass ruined Adam Cole's debut. Yeah, Adam Cole has a catchy theme song, and he is a great wrestler. Awesome talker. But to have him debut on the same night as Adam Cole, well, it took away from Cole. So you see what I mean? He came in super hot. Probably as hot as CM Punk coming back to feud with John Cena. Now, I make a lot of comparisons because I want you to open your mind and I want you to see what I'm seeing. And this is the way I look at wrestling. Nothing in wrestling is brand new, everything is recycled. And that's okay. That's what professional wrestling is. It's a soap opera. And it's okay to recycle storylines and gimmicks. And I believe that Bryan had given the proper direction would have been the right call to end Kenny Omega's title reign. But they didn't do that. They just had him wrestle Kenny. They had him help put over Hangman Adam Page. And they just relegated him to being pretty much Jon Moxley's second in command with the Blackpool Combat Club. So as he fell down the card, I realized something. I realized back a couple of years ago, Bryan had talked about this on a podcast where he mentioned that he had no interest in being champion anymore. Sounds familiar, right? Shawn Michaels had the same stance. He didn't want to be champion. He wanted to help push along future wrestlers. Now, Bryan was specific. He mentioned guys like Heath Slater and Drew Gulak. But AEW, they just didn't want to strike while the iron was hot. They wanted to continue to push their guys. And that's fine. That's worked out really well for them. I mean, I think they just crossed 100 million in sales this year. So they're doing amazing. But every now and then, Bryan gets thrust into the world title picture. And it's always pretty much to save the day. And this time, when we didn't know who MJF was going to feud with. You see, AEW doesn't do the standard wrestler wins title, wrestler works the guy that he beat the title for, that he beat for the title, and then moves on to another feud. Once their champion wins the title, that feud is forgotten. It's kind of out of the ordinary from normal wrestling. But in this case, Bryan has been working himself up the card, just putting on banger after banger after banger. Well, MJF is doing everything in his power to make Bryan look like he's not the best challenger, or he's not going to make it to him. Now, again, this is kind of recycled. It's a similar storyline to the Wardlow feud or the CM Punk feud, but AEW is still new to this. But in this case, I think it has worked wonders. Because what they're able to do is they're able to get fans to do what we're traditionally supposed to do. Right now, we all love Bryan and we hate MJF. That's professional wrestling. You're supposed to feel. And whether or not you think Bryan's overrated, which I think that's just ludicrous, whether or not you think MJF is overrated, I also think that's ludicrous. You have to admit that this feud has been beautiful. I personally believe that all of the work Bryan's doing will culminate in MJF getting the W. And the reason I think that's the right call is because that's what we need. We need MJF to be that guy who can't lose the title. He's dastardly. He's very similar to the classic conniving heel. And that's wonderful for professional wrestling because face champions, they're kind of boring. Yeah, I mean, there's only so much you could do. It's kind of like every time Jon Moxley wins the title, we don't get anything new out of it. He just works who he wants to work. He goes back and has death matches. And he defends the title when he needs to. There's no new ingredient to his championship reign. This has been unique. See, even with Kenny Omega, who held the title for over a year, his focus wasn't AEW. His focus wasn't being the AEW champion. His focus was collecting all of the belts from all the promotions. That's why I think MJF is so unique. And that's why I think Bryan is the perfect foil to that. Now, again, I'll say I believe that MJF wins this feud. I believe he retains the title. And I'm hoping, please, let this come true, but I'm hoping that they have more than just one match. Because I believe Bryan can get the most out of MJF. All the near falls Bryan will give him, all of the tips and tricks that Bryan will give him in the ring, it'll help MJF progress into this monster heel that we'll be talking about for years to come. Now, I want to make one final comparison before I jump onto another topic. If you go back to late 90s, early 2000s, one of the biggest heels in professional wrestling that wasn't in WCW and wasn't in WWE was Shane Douglas. And he was hated. I mean, I'm pretty sure he was a finalist, or he might have even won Most Hated Wrestler of the Year for PWI. And I know PWI is more for you and I, it's more for the fans. And wrestlers don't really take it seriously. Unless they win number one on the PWI 500, then they take that seriously. But I remember hating Shane Douglas. Pretty much anybody he wrestled, I rooted for that other guy. And I miss those days of wrestling. I miss hating guys like that. So I'm loving what MJF is doing. I'm hoping you are too. So, interact with me on TikTok. My name is Boricualu. That's B-O-R-C or BORICUA.LOU. Interact with me. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I'm crazy, that this MJF and Bryan feud is just a one-off and it's not that great. Let me know if you agree that it's one of the best things going in professional wrestling today. So, with that, I'm going to segue into Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn is this day and age's Mick Foley. He has the love of the crowd. He has the love of the locker room. Everyone is behind him. We all want him to succeed. But what I saw last night on Monday Night Raw was something so unique that only a guy like Triple H would be able to fix. Cody Rhodes used Sami Zayn in his promo against Paul Heyman. He made sure to mention him. He made sure to acknowledge him. To talk about that it might be Cody versus Sami at Mania. Now, we don't know if that's what's going to happen. But if it does happen, now if Cody beats Sami at Mania, everybody will be happy because Sami would be walking into WrestleMania as champion. Now, personally, I don't believe that's going to happen. Personally, I believe that Roman Reigns retains the title, and I think he retains it convincingly. Now, clearly it's in Montreal, so the Usos can't be there because of travel issues. But I do believe that Solo will be there. Paul Heyman will be there. And yes, I do believe that Kevin Owens will be there as well. But just something tells me that Roman's going to go over to get more heat. And giving Sami this match, it's so brilliant. But my God, to have Cody Rhodes use him the way he did last night was exceptional. Because right now, the best promo in the game is Cody Rhodes. And I love that he went up against another great promo in Paul Heyman. I loved how they made it personal. But they acknowledged the love for Sami. And every time the crowd chanted for Sami, Cody was essentially chanting with them. He wasn't ignoring them. And that's what tends to happen. If you go back to when WWE had their main event hijacked for WrestleMania 30, WWE didn't want to acknowledge Daniel Bryan. It took a while. They didn't even put him in the Rumble. They decided they don't need him. They had their mind set on Batista and Randy Orton. And I believe that Cody versus Roman was the plan all along. Clearly, that would deviate if The Rock was involved. But at this point, I believe The Rock will not be involved. So by Triple H actually being a part of that feud, pretty much having to give fans what they wanted, or Batista was going to get booed out of the building at WrestleMania 30, he knows what to do differently. And I absolutely love that. I think it's one of the best calls in professional wrestling in modern day. Now, I do believe Sami Zayn has to change a couple of things. I kind of want him to cut his hair. I want him to go back to that steampunk music. I want him to be Sami Zayn, the NXT Sami Zayn. I want that awesome professional wrestler, the guy who just absolutely can steal the show with Shinsuke Nakamura when that was not supposed to steal the show. That's what I'm hoping we get. I'm hoping we get that feud. I'm hoping we get that type of Sami Zayn. Talk about is how brilliant I think the WWE is with the women's elimination chamber. Because what they're doing and what they did last night was they showed all of the women competitors outside the ring watching Asuka. Now, I believe Asuka goes over. I think she wins, and I think we get Asuka versus Bianca at WrestleMania. Now, I wanted Alexa Bliss. I wanted that feud to keep going, and I wanted more from Dark Alexa. But clearly, that's not the plan. So, I want Asuka to be that person. Now, would I like Asuka to get her W at WrestleMania? Of course. Do I think it's going to happen? I'm undecided yet. I don't know where they're going with this, but that's what's so intriguing. We get this perfect lead up. Right now, there's so many questions surrounding Bianca Belair's title. We don't know who she's going to wrestle. We don't know what's going to come of it, but I believe that her and Asuka would tear the house down. Now, unfortunately, because there's two nights and because both main events have pretty much been told to us, we know that Asuka and Bianca won't be a main event. But is it main event caliber? Absolutely. It's one of the best things that we've seen in a long time. I am getting a little ahead of myself because I'm assuming that Asuka does win. But if she doesn't, I think it'll be a huge mistake. Obviously, I'm going to hedge my bets here a little bit. If somehow Alexa Bliss gets put into this elimination chamber and she winds up winning, then I think Bianca versus Alexa is more intriguing than Rhea versus Charlotte. Now, I'm looking forward to Rhea versus Charlotte because no one gets a talent over the way Charlotte Flair does. Say what you will about the opportunity she's been given, but the one thing she can do and the one thing she will do is she will put over talent. She will help push talent further along. Hoping I'm hoping that Austin Theory retains his United States Championship. But I wanted to throw this out there. See if anybody's listening. See if anybody's paying attention. John Cena is at a point in his career where he doesn't need to wrestle maybe once every couple of years, maybe once a year, just so he maintains that little footnote. What I would personally love, because I think it would help push more talent, is I would love if Austin Theory versus John Cena was not for the United States Championship. Now, if it is, that's great. But to have the title be moved over to a guy like Montez Ford, oh my God. He has all the goods, the looks, the athleticism, the charisma. I mean, he is a superstar in waiting. Right now, he's a star, and he's one of the biggest stars of the mid card. But going to WrestleMania as champion, the United States champion, I believe he would tear the house down. I don't think there's anybody that this man can't work. He is a brilliant worker. I love watching everything he does, from his entrance to his amazing frog splash. And there have been some great frog splashes over the years. Montez takes it to another level. The heights. Oh my God. Speaking of heights, my God, sometimes I think he's going to touch the roof. He's so great. I've been lucky enough to see him twice in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And both times I've seen him, I am amazed at how phenomenal this man is. He is one of the best wrestlers I've seen in a very long time. And for someone who gets put into the category, I know you're going to say this is crazy, but I believe he gets put into the category of a guy like Kurt Angle or Ken Shamrock. Now, I'm not saying he's as good as Kurt Angle, but what I'm saying is he might be as good as Ken Shamrock. Shamrock was able to do was transition from mixed martial arts to professional wrestling seamlessly. He was so good at it, and it worked so well. Now, you can say what you will about Ken Shamrock, but I watched a lot during the Attitude Era, and that man was over. I went to an autograph signing of his, Mick Foley, and Al Snow, and my God, was he over. There were people freaking out there. Little kids showing up with gloves, whipping their arms out, yelling at him. Ken Shamrock was over. And that's why I think that Montez Ford is very similar to him, because he wasn't a professional wrestler his whole entire life. He transitioned into wrestling, and he's been able to do it with little to no effort. Now, I'm sure he's worked his tail off. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying he's a natural. And it is amazing to watch. So, thank you for listening to Rican Wrestling Talk. I will post one episode every single week, delving into different topics. Let me know what you think. Again, I'm your host, Luis Rodriguez, and you can find me on TikTok, BORICUA.LOU. And you can find this on Spotify. Thanks for listening. I'm out.